Hi, my name is Jason Teteak, and I help thought leaders spread their ideas. Do you have an idea? You know, most people don't say to me, Jason, I can't wait to someday speak in Monterey. That's the place where TED started, 1990. But they almost always say, Jason, I want to show other people how to convince them that my idea, I want to be able to convince them my idea is right. I want to be able to tell people what I think and get them to listen to me. I was one of these people. In 1993, I took my first teaching job. It's in Beloit, Wisconsin. And my supervisor at the time, Dr. Elsie, I was a college student. My dad was an elementary principal at the time in Beloit. And my supervisor, Dr. Elsie, said to me, Jason, we're going to hire you as an aide. I know you're going to be a teacher in high school, so we're going to bring you on as an aide. We've got 3 classes. There's 39 kids in each one. They've all flunked math last year, and they're going to be in summer school, and you're going to float from room to room, and you're going to help them. And I looked at him and I said, that's a lot of kids in each room. He goes, I know, it's the best we've got. It's all we can do. I said, well, I have an idea. What if I take 6 kids from each room, form a class of 18, I teach them upstairs, and we bring it down to a manageable number. He looks at me and he says, I know your dad. I'll let you do this. I was about 19, 20. I go into the first room, and I look at the teacher and I say, I'd like to take 6 of your kids to go teach them upstairs. And she looks at me and she goes, you can have him, her, him, and him. So then I went to the next classroom and I did it again. And I did that in the next one. We traipse up to the 2nd floor, and Dr. Elsie comes with me. Now, this is a man that looks like James Earl Jones and acts like Russell Crowe. Dr. Elsie gets into the room, and he looks at these kids, and he says to them, you don't get a second chance this summer. This is your second chance. So if you mess up with Mr. Teteak, and I'm thinking to myself, ooh, I've never heard that before, but that sounds good. If you mess up with him, you're done. If he sends you to me, that's it. So I am thinking to myself, well, this is going to be easy. All I have to do is teach. And within 5 minutes after he left, 2 desks flew across the room. And I realized right then and there, and had conversation after conversation with my father during that summer, that getting your message across is not as easy as it looks. But why do so many people watch TED Talks? Because that's really what this is all about, isn't it? 15 million people watch the #1 TED Talk on YouTube. The top 10 average between 3 and 15 million. Why? Right now, on this very day, there are hundreds of TED Talks given all around the globe. They call them TEDx. What if there was a way to figure out what all of them do, bottle it up, and make it easy to implement for anyone in the world? I'm going to suggest there is, and I'm going to show you how to do it right now. And I'm going to start by suggesting to you that you've got to tell them first how what you do helps them. Do you remember how I started this talk? I help thought leaders spread their ideas. I didn't say I'm Jason Teteak and I've been doing this for 20 years and blah, blah, blah. Who cares? It's interesting, but it's not compelling. What people really want to know is the same reason for why they all tune to one radio station, WIIFM. What's in it for me? That's what people want to know. Isn't it true that anytime you give a TED Talk, you're meeting people for the first time? This is why they say when you give a TED Talk, you should always tell a story, because then they can get to know you. But couldn't we bottle this up and use it in our lives everywhere? This is my real idea. What if I could bottle this up for you and teach this to you in the next 10 minutes, which I plan to do, and you could use it in the coffee shop with your friends, in the business meeting when you're trying to convince your associates, even at Thanksgiving when you meet Uncle Earl for the first time. What if you could do that? It turns out there's one significant idea that you need to understand before we even get started. Turns out people don't laugh because something's funny. They laugh when they're feeling good. And they don't feel good until they first feel safe, which means your first step if you're making notes, is to make your audience feel safe. See, it's not about you, it's about them. So I was thinking to myself, well, these goldfish here, this is how most people approach conversations with people, isn't it? Hey, buy what I have to say, or listen to me because I have this great idea. And the goldfish say, what's in this for me? It looks like you're just going to hook me and grab me and take me up. So how do you do this? Well, here's how you do it. The first thing you do is, instead of telling people what you do, tell them how what you do helps them. And here's the exact recipe. You know how some people have this problem? Well, I offer this solution. You know how thought leaders have this amazing idea, but they have a hard time getting people to listen and spreading it? I help thought leaders spread their ideas. I was talking to a developer, amazing developer. He writes code. And I said to him, I see you give a lot of talks about your software. And he says, yep. I said, well, what do you say when you first introduce yourself to people, whether it's in front of 300 people or one person? He says, oh, I say I'm a developer. I've been writing code for about 10 years and blah, blah, blah. And I said, that's interesting, but it's not very compelling. I said, what is the problem you're trying to solve? And he says, well, you know, software is hard to use. It's not very intuitive for people. Well, I make the software easier to use. And I looked at him and I go, oh, start with that. Hi, my name's John Smith, and I make software easier to use. Oh, now people want to hear what he has to say. In fact, if you do this right, people will look at you and go, I've been looking for someone like you. What's yours? Well, the second thing that people don't understand, and it's a common thread between all the greatest TED Talks in the world, is that they don't start with what they're going to tell you. They start with why you'd want it. Simon Sinek gave one of, in my opinion, the greatest TEDx talks ever, called The Golden Circle. Anyone ever seen it? Got a lot of hands going up. He suggests that people aren't as impressed with what you have to say, or even how you're going to do it, until they first know why they'd want it. I was in line to buy an iPad 2 years ago for my wife, Jess. And I'm standing in line, about 55 people back in the Apple store. And I look at the guy next to me, I see you're in line to buy an iPad. And he looks at me and goes, yep. I said, well, what does it do? He goes, I don't know, I've never seen one. I said, you've never seen one? Well, then how do you know you want it? He said, because it's going to change my life. True story. All these stories I tell you are true. And I said to him, how do you know that? He goes, because it's going to save me time. It's going to make me more efficient at my job. I'm going to get more stuff done. And ultimately, I'll spend more time with my wife and kids. How do you know that? He says. Oh, I was watching a presentation from Steve Jobs. Oh, so Steve understood this. Oh, so Apple understood this. It's how they became the most successful company in the world. They teach people, and Simon Sinek explains this with his golden circle, why they want it, before they tell them what they're going to get. But presenters forget this. The greatest TED speakers never forget this. This is how they start. Some people say, well, you got to start with a story. That's what makes TED Talks great. Maybe. Depends on your style. About 5 minutes, I'm going to show you there's 4 kinds of TED styles, 4 kinds of presentation personality styles, and you got to be the one that you were born with. I'm going to show you how to figure that out and use it. But first, you must tell them why they'd want it before you tell them what they're going to get. Here's the recipe. Everyone in life wants 3 things. They want happiness, they want success, and they want freedom. Some people will tell you, I just want to be happy. That's not true. I know a lot of people. I have a friend who plays the Wii all day at his brother's house. He doesn't have a job. He plays the Wii. He loves the Wii. He's very happy. But he has no success or freedom. There's people who are working on Wall Street, making tons of money and moving up the ladder. Very successful. But they have no time to spend with their children, or their wives or husbands, or their significant others, and they're not free. We want all 3. So here's what you do. You write down what it is you want to talk about, your idea. Then you write down why people would want to hear it. And the way you do it is you ask yourself, will this idea make them happier in their life, more successful, or have more freedom? Whatever the answer to that is, then ask yourself, well, why will it do that? You see, Steve Jobs did this. This is why Apple's so successful. And then the next thing that you do, by the way, This is my brother and I watching our first TED Talk. The next thing you do is you use your style to achieve this. Now this is very interesting. As you know, I train trainers, but I also train executives and financial professionals, and salespeople, and academic administrators, and key players in almost every kind of organization you can think of. I teach them how to communicate more effectively. And whenever I watch someone new that's learning how to do whatever it is that they need to do, let's say it's a new HR professional learning about this, delivering their first talk on 401ks, I watch them watch a mentor. The mentor's amazing, and so what does the person do? Copy them. I'm going to suggest that that doesn't work. Today, I'm going to show you 4 different styles of speaking and communicating, and I'm going to give you, in my opinion, the top 4 TED Talks of all time. I'm going to tell you who delivered them, how they did it, and I want you to think about which style is the one that you can identify with the most. Let's start with this diagram. If you draw a circle around a quadrant, at the top of the circle, write down the word responder. And at the bottom of the circle, write down the word leader. On the left, write down the word thinker. And on the right, feeler. I'm going to suggest, and by the way, this is not something I came up with. This part isn't. This is something that Carl Jung thought of years ago, and we base almost every personality profile on the planet on this thing. But if we apply it to communicating, speaking, it could change everything. What I mean by that is this. This is where I was born. I'm very nurturing, very responding. I like to respond to people's needs. It's one of the reasons I love speaking, because I can meet the needs of my audience. Today, some of you don't know this, but I interviewed 10 people in the audience and asked them what they wanted from a TED Talk. Found out what their needs were, and I'm going to deliver those today. When I speak to teachers on how to be more effective with their classrooms, I ask them, what are the things that you want to know about your students? My wife, on the other hand, is here. This is Jess. This is me, Jason, and this is Jess down here. I'm going to suggest that these people are what are called inspirers. These people are fascinators. These people down here are energizers. And the people on the right are what I call performers. This is the part that I made up. But I really didn't make it up. I just put labels on what I've been observing for years. Now, it turns out that some of the best TED speakers ever fall in each of these quadrants, and if they're really good, and by the way, if you're really good at a meeting with Uncle Earl or with your staff or whoever it is you're talking with, they also do this. They're doing it in their style. They're not being fake. Daniel Pink is the first one. Daniel Pink is a fascinator. He is in the top 10 TED Talks of all time. Google him, you'll see it. Go on YouTube and watch his video. It's amazing. He wrote a book called A Whole New Mind, and in this book he has an idea that's fascinating that suggests that you can't fake a smile. In fact, there's a zygomatic muscle connecting the corners of your eyes with your mouth. It's only engaged when you smile sincerely. If you don't smile sincerely, you can actually prove this. Go to your local supermarket, find your favorite celebrity, and if they've been followed around by the paparazzi, cover up their mouth and their nose, and they're not smiling sincerely, their eyes will actually look evil. This is my son, Trey. Trey, when he saw me the other day come into the room, he started cracking up. I didn't say anything funny, but he's laughing. Why? You should already know this. Because he's feeling good. You got to make your audience feel safe, then good, then they'll laugh. You got to do it in your style. This is my wife, Jess. When Trey came in the room on the left, she was pretty excited to see Trey. This is where I told her to smile without being sincere. Try it. Cover up her mouth and nose and see how the ones on the right make her eyes look evil. What I just did with you is I fascinated you with Daniel's idea, but it was fascinating. I think that's really interesting. Inspires, on the other hand, this would be me, and this is also Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs delivers one of the top 10 TED Talks of all time, and he does it in front of Stanford University. And it turns out, I'm not only going to tell you how your style fits here, I'm going to give you the 2 things that thread every style. It's vulnerability and surprise. First story I told you today. I told you about 2 desks being thrown across my room. I made myself look vulnerable because it's more sincere. You can't fake a smile, You can't fake sincerity. Well, this does change everything. Steve Jobs stands up in front of all these people, and you know what the first thing he says to all these college grads at Stanford? Yeah, I didn't graduate college. First thing he says. Then he says, I'm going to tell you 3 stories. That's it. That's going to be my talk. Turns out inspirers are really good at stories. Fascinators are really good at trivia, which, by the way, Daniel Pink did. Steve tells 3 stories, and the first story he tells is about Mac and how he went to calligraphy school and learned about lettering and applied it to the Mac. And then he tells them that because he did that, that's what made computers so great. And then he throws in, and by the way, since IBM copies Mac, they did it too. And he says this, and everybody starts laughing. Why do they laugh? For the same reason that Daniel's audience laughed. There was a surprise. Nobody expected that. Nobody expected that Daniel would say, if you cover up their mouth and nose, their eyes look evil. Nobody expected he'd say, IBM copied Mac. Then there's the energizer and the performer, which both are natural-born leaders. They have a lot of confidence. Let me tell you about the performer first. These people have a tremendous amount of courage, and this would be Anthony Robbins. Tony Robbins, anybody know him? And the courage, what I mean by this is they have charisma with that. They have an amazing amount of charisma. Tony Robbins stands up and gives one of the top 10 TED Talks of all time. And he asks his audience, what do you think, why do you think people aren't motivated? And somebody in the room says, well, because of money, because of politics, because of this. And one of the people in the room says, the Supreme Court. Surprise, right? He looks over, it's Al Gore. And you know what he does? Performers are great at this because they do on-the-fly intuitive stuff. He does a stunt on the fly. It's not stories, it's not trivia, it's stunts. He goes over to Al Gore and high-fives the guy in front of everybody during his TED Talk. Now, I wouldn't do that as much as Tony would because it's not as natural for me. But I love to tell stories. Have you noticed all the stories I've been telling? But if I coach someone, I'd say, don't do what I do. You can weave stories and you center yourself, do all 4, that's fine. But stay in your quadrant. Daniel is fascinating to listen to, Daniel Pink, and he stays in that quadrant. That's why people love him. And the last one, Sir Robinson. You ever seen this guy? Some everybody's going, that's because he's the #1 TED Talk in the world. 15 million views. This guy also has courage, but the way that he does it isn't through stunts, it's through groaners. By the way, some of you are thinking, this is great, but how does it apply to me? If you're an energizer, in other words, you're a thinker, you're very analytical, and you have a lot of confidence naturally, you're a leader, that means you're an energizer, you should do it like him. And here's what he does. He does a groaner as soon as he walks up. He walks up, looks at his audience, you can watch this on YouTube and see it. He says, aren't these TED Talks great? He says, I've been totally blown away by them. In fact, I'm leaving. Now, by the way, he got a huge ovation from this. I didn't just now. That's because he's the opposite of me. I can't pull the groaner off like he can. That's the point. Be yourself. Here's the takeaway. If you want to give an amazing TED Talk everywhere you go, not just in Monterey, California, and not just at TEDx Talks all around the globe, but everywhere in your life to get people to listen to your idea, then here's what you do. You make people feel safe by first telling them how you help their role. I said, I help thought leaders spread their ideas. Then you make them feel good by first telling them why they'd want it based on happiness, success, and freedom before you tell them what they're going to get. And lastly, you make them laugh by showing vulnerability, giving an element of surprise, and doing it in the style that's all your own. So go give a TED Talk wherever you go. Thank you.